Hey guys, how's everyone doing today on this beautiful Saturday in Dallas, Texas? Welcome to a bunch of short guys online meeting. I'm glad everyone can make it out. Today we got Nelson Lim on one man's journey into Houdini and VFX. Nelson, thank you for being here. I also want to thank you to David Lesperance for being out last month for talking through his life experiences. Um, you know, we used to do meetings at Calling College, and we will get back to those at some point, and we'll get back to doing the little live parties that we used to do. Um, but for now, we're going to keep on with this online thing. We're getting ready for Industry Giants to be coming up very soon. We have some announcements to be made in the next month or so. And these are just some picks from last year's Gillies with a bunch of our volunteers, our speakers, everyone, where we did some live drawing. We also did Artist Alley with George and a bunch of other folks with portfolio reviews as well. And we'll probably be doing a lot of this again. If you guys want to help volunteer, we always need more volunteers. And if you want to catch up with some of the stuff from last year, just go to Industry Giants YouTube and you can look up some of the stuff there. One of the things I did want to mention real fast for everyone is that we do now have a Discord. So you guys can go to our Discord and you can chat with us, ask us questions, show us some of the cool things you guys are working on, and we'll tell you, meetings and upcoming events and studios that are hiring as well, and some portfolio reviews. We even have a monthly challenge in here as well, if you guys wanted to join us with that. Lizzie Neal, she's helping us with that. And then we also got Marshall and Ethan up in the booth, helping us moderate and taking care of all the streams. Nelson, thank you again for being here. If you are ready, we can go right to you. I think you're on mute, Nelson.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Can you guys hear me?
I can.
All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen here.
So before we get right into it, I was just going to mention that we've been looking forward to this talk for almost like 6 months, I think. I think me and you talked about this thing at the very beginning of the year, and then with everything that's been changing around the world, we've had to postpone, reschedule, rework the way we're going to present. So thank you for bearing with us. And another note about Industry Giants, it was so incredible to see you and Alan McKay just hit it off at Industry Giants, and I'm glad we got to do an actual face-to-face there. So
yeah, well, thank you so much, Daniel, and everyone at a bunch of short guys for having me. It's a real privilege to be able to come and share, my own little journey into VFX and Houdini, and I really enjoyed last year's Industry Giants event. It sadly was my first time and this year things kind of went crazy, but it was a blast, and I'm really excited about what you guys are going to do this year, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be exciting and there will be interesting things that you could do that you couldn't have done previously. So really excited about it. All right, so I'll just, I think today, I think the point of just, being able to converse with you all is, maybe, to be able to help, share my journey that may be able to help someone out in their journey, as well as, see if there's any other way I could help the audience out here. Let me see. How many people do we have on the live stream? And I'm curious if I could find out, do you guys know if I could find out, how many of you are, aspiring CG artists, or how many of you are, professional CG artists working, in the industry, whether it's film, games, or visualization,
I should also mention, guys, you can go, if you're watching this on the YouTube, you can chat in the YouTube, and we're moderating that. So you guys, we can see both the YouTube chat and the Zoom chat, just depending on where you're watching this from.
Cool. So Daniel, if you could let me know the answers,
It
that
may
will
take a
help
minute,
me
so.
to, that will just help me to tailor this presentation. So I make sure I deliver sufficient, because there's a lot to cover here today, and I'm really excited to talk about it. So let me just jump right in. So a little bit about me. I'm a creative technologist, or sometimes, I'm a pipeline TD. I'm a head of technology before in my previous lives. I'm also an effects TD, and more lately, I am actually an educator. I'm currently a professor of games and animation at the University of Texas at Dallas, ATech School of ATech. So if you are, attending and you are from ATech, go comments. So, yeah. So that's a little bit about me. I've worked in feature films. I've worked on, a little bit of game cinematics, and a whole bunch of, pipeline as well. So what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about art and technology, as well as life-changing truth. So these is the thing that keeps me awake, that makes me want to get up in the morning and want to do the work that I do, or talk to people like you. So real quick, these are some past projects. Not all the projects, but these are maybe a collection of those projects that I've sort of been involved with in the past. So yeah, a lot of more feature film experience. Also worked on a little bit of Fortnite cinematics, which was a pretty cool project. And I think some of this stuff you will see as we talk a little bit about Houdini. Places I've worked in before include ILM and Brazen Animation. And then over the years, I've sort of led teams and helped to create feature film effects, CG pipelines, real-time solutions for cinematics, AR, VR type experiences. And these days, besides teaching at UTD, I also teach and help other CG practitioners to create more, earn more, and live more through my website, nelsonlim.com. And quite recently, a YouTube channel. So you can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/NelsonLim. So in there, I share tips, insights, interviews, tutorials, even to help fellow CG practitioners create more, earn more, and live more. Currently, we are going through a Python series for the anxious artist. So if you've ever wanted to learn Python, but for whatever reason have not, whether you were overwhelmed or just too busy, this is a series that is aimed at introducing you to Python and how it can be an excellent tool in your toolkit as a CG artist. All right, a little bit about my childhood. For those of you, most of you who are not familiar with my childhood, when I was a kid, I loved, and that's me on the extreme right, and the rest are my cousins and my sisters on the left. I used to love to draw and doodle, so I would draw everywhere, on the walls, on my foolscap pad, on my notebooks, just kind of everywhere. And I also loved my encyclopedias and taking things apart and just trying to figure out how things work. So I would take clocks apart, but as a 6-year-old, I could never figure out how to put them back together. So I think my parents had to buy lots of clocks throughout throughout my childhood. And then right about 9 years old, I fell in love with PC games. My mom brought back I think it was like an IBM XT computer where she would use to do her counting. It didn't even have a hard drive. You had to boot it up through a floppy disk. And it was really a floppy disk. It really flopped, And I was playing games like Romance of the Three Kingdoms by Covey, Magic Carpet, Master of Orion, SimCity. So for those of you, yeah, I'm actually kind of dating myself right now, talking about these games. But these were the things that really piqued my curiosity, and I was curious about how games worked. And I was on game development forums. In fact, I wasn't your typical gamer in that, like, I hardly finished most of the games I played. I was more interested in how they were made. So again, I was on game dev forums trying to learn, and I really had no idea what I was doing. I really didn't know what I was doing. But I somehow managed to convince friends that we could develop a game using a word processor. Some of you might remember WordPerfect. It's still around apparently, but obviously not many people use it today. So
this is perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually, I figured out, hey, I actually have to, to develop games, you actually have to learn to program. So I picked up programming, and because I thought I wanted to develop games. And in the meantime, I was falling in love with Warcraft, Diablo, Command and Conquer, all the cinematics that they were throwing out. And so I was like, how do they do all this? And I figured out, this 3D, CG. Okay, I ought to pick it up. So I went to the bookstore, and back in the days where you still had to learn all of this stuff through books. And I couldn't afford those books because they were like, how much? I think they were like $100 for a book on CG. So I had to go to a secondhand bookstore, and by that time, I think Max was at like 3.0 or 4.0, and I picked up like a Max 2.0 book. I was telling Daniel last night about that story. That was kind of how I got started. So I was in 3D Studio Max for a very short period of time.
It made you have a vested interest. Like, if I'm picking up $200 for a book, I'm going to like make sure I read that book. Whereas now it's like, I got a free YouTube thing. I'm a vested.
That's true. So, eventually, I kind of got into college, and I studied computer science with an emphasis on graphics because schools, there really wasn't much of a CG industry, and the schools really didn't teach game development or animation or VFX, not like they do right now. And I was in Singapore, so the CG industry there was really almost non-existent. So I was kind of a bit stuck there. And so I was in college. I was taking all these classes, and my instructor was trying to teach me game development. There was 1 or 2 game development courses. It was kind of starting, but my instructor had no experience in the industry. And so I was like, how do I even know what the CG industry is like? Will I even like it? And it turns out that was a great question. So I decided, well, why don't I start applying for internships to game companies? And that was exactly what I did. I started applying to all these game companies, and like even offering to work for free, like to intern for free. But I was not getting any response. I was either getting crickets, or I was being asked to fill in programming tests, like really, really obscure testing, very obscure knowledge about computer graphics and all. And then later being told that, hey, actually we aren't looking for interns at the moment. So maybe it's true, or maybe I was just so bad they didn't really want to say
your
no
wheels
to me.
almost, it sounds like.
Yeah. So, but I was thankful for that because I was really, really thankful for that because I got rejected from all of those internships. And, I was kind of running desperate. I was like, okay, maybe I just have to go back to school and just finish out my school. But right about that time, as the summer vacation breaks was about ending, I got a last minute email through the school about a software engineering internship opportunity at a studio called Lucasfilm. And I was like, okay, it's so last minute that it meant that whoever had to take it was going to have to delay their graduation by a semester. And that really sucked because you still have to pay your tuition fees, even if you're not really in school for the semester. But, you know, I wasn't so keen about Lucasfilm itself, but I was really wanting to develop games, and I heard that there was LucasArts. And so I was like, okay, you know, I'm going to give it a go. And so I gave it a try. And, you know, my soon-to-be boss was trying to explain to me that in the interview that, you know, you're not going to be working on games, right? And I was like, so clueless. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. So what am I going to be working on? And he tried to explain to me all of the stuff that I was going to be working on, and I had no idea, you know. But anyway, I thought, hey, I had nothing to lose, you know. At least I'll get to see some game developers work, and you know, I figured out if I could see a game developer close enough, you know, maybe by some magic of osmosis, I would be able to figure out my way. So I went in, and that was kind of where I found out that this whole other world of VFX. So I really stumbled into VFX trying to get into games. and at that point in time, you know, everything was like AAA games, and I really wasn't as keen in AAA games in being sort of like just very specialized in the physics engine or the networking engine of a game. I was wanting to do something a little bit more holistic. And so I really enjoyed that, you know, VFX, whatever you did in VFX, you would actually see it up in the big screen. And so I made a quick pivot, and I thought, hey, you know, I wanted to work in VFX. Again, you know, I was so clueless. I was feeling clueless and stuck because no one could really clearly tell me how to break into the industry. I didn't even know what the different roles were that well. Every artist I spoke to, you know, I was like, yeah, that must be the role for me. You know, so from one moment I thought I'd be an animator, and then I thought I'll be a rigger, and then I thought I'll be an effects artist. You know, I thought I'll be many things. But I think the key for me was the I soon stumbled upon the aspiring VFX artist dilemma, which is how do you get hired into a studio if you don't have a demo reel? And how do you get a demo reel if you aren't working in a studio? You know, it's such a dilemma. And, you know, ILM and many big studios will not, you know, hire you to be an artist if you don't at least have 2 to 3 years of feature film experience. And that's the truth, and that's the reality. And I think, you know, that just needs to be tempered, right? Especially when I first started off, I was like, why not? And, you know, there's a reason why, because it takes a while to build up that experience. So, you know, kind of what now? I can't get experience without working in ILM, and I can't work in ILM without experience. You know, but I crave to work with the best. I wanted to learn from the best. I wanted to work on the best projects so that I could get my name on the credits of major feature films. And, you know, that kind of sounds a bit vain, but that was what I was thinking about. You know, I wanted to see my name on the credits of major feature films. And, you know, honestly, that's okay, because I think our goals change over time.
Yeah.
But I was impatient. I was like an impatient, clueless go-getter. I didn't even know that it would take 3 to 5 years for an average CG artist, you know, really putting in the work and the experience to even build a portfolio to even consider applying for a studio like Lucasfilm, ILM. So how did I do it? Because my first job out of graduation was really with Lucasfilm. How did I go from being clueless with almost no chance of getting into the industry to working with ILM as my first job, and, you know, eventually becoming an effects TD on films like Pacific Rim, Transformers, Avengers, all of that kind of stuff. And I think it starts off with finding your why. And I just want to share that a little bit with aspiring CG artists, or even if you're a CG artist for a while, knowing why you want to do something oftentimes is more important than how you do it or what you are doing. And I've seen many artists and friends and colleagues who have, sort of gotten into the industry and now have pivoted and gone away because as the years went by, they have clarified their whys. And sometimes their whys don't necessarily align with the VFX industry. So, it's really important for you to sort of know that, and obviously my initial why was, I just wanted to have my name on credits, big credits, and I think, most CG artists are passionate about CG and art, but being passionate about something alone isn't going to see you through the long haul, especially during the valleys of your career and all. Understanding why is so crucial. That's how you're going to motivate yourself and know what you're doing and why you're doing something, what makes you wake up every morning to do it. I knew kind of early on, actually, in my life, through a mentor at my church, that I was passionate about both art and technology and seeing lives change through meaningful truth. So while I didn't know that I was going to go into VFX, games, or even necessarily teaching, it was, all the things that I do is very much aligned with my passions for art and technology, as well as seeing lives change. And, whether it's in VFX where I want to see CG or VFX where I want to see meaningful truths communicated through storytelling, or I wanted to clarify that actually I was never passionate about entertainment value alone. So I was one of those artists in a production environment where, people would say, yeah, we're creating entertainment for people. And I would like, yeah, that's not very motivating for me. I was passionate about inspirational values of stories. So whenever I got a chance to work on inspirational stories, I was like, yay, and that's also the reason why I'm doing this talk, because I like to be able to share my journey. Maybe there's some truth in my journey that's going to help you as a CG artist or as an aspiring CG artist. And, I'd love it if some of this truth that I got to share through my journey has some sort of an impact on you as an artist. So, go look at what you're passionate about. Why do you believe in it? And how can you spend your life and use your passions and beliefs to do something for someone besides yourself? How can you add value to someone else? And I want to be clear that there's nothing wrong with being passionate about entertaining people. That's just not my passion, but it is a meaningful thing to entertain people. And so if that's your passion, there's nothing wrong with that.
It sounds like your passion is connecting with people on an emotional level. That's what you're like, oh, I made something and I made someone feel this, or even if that's through the work or, the work itself,
Yes. Like. Yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely right. And yeah, so I really recommend that you take the time to write down, what's your personal mission statement? What's your vision statement? What is it you believe in, you're passionate about? What is it that you want to spend your life or your energies or your time adding value to someone else with? And keep that mission statement, that vision statement, like close to you. Like write it somewhere, keep it close to you. See it all the time. If you have issues sort of like figuring that one out, a couple of books that I recommend that are really, really good and have been helpful in my own journey is one, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. That's a great book that talks about why it's really important to start with why. And I think John C. Maxwell has a really good book called Intentional Living So I'm going to, include those resources in a link that I think will be attached to this live video cast when it comes out, so that you guys can, just look for those resources that I mentioned in here. So when you find your why, then your how becomes possible. And so for me, my how, involved being proactive. So the thing I did was I did the best job I could possibly do during my internship. I was developing all kinds of web applications for the library, for the games department, for facilities, for operations. I walked to my clients, my internal clients. I would observe what they do, how they use the tools we built. I would ask them what they felt needed improvement. And I would walk back to my cubicle and turn that around. So I would learn Python, Oracle database, jQuery, every day on my 3-hour commute to work and home. So I was pretty passionate back then, I guess, because it took 3 hours to commute back home, to work and back to home. The two-way journey was about 3 hours. And I made sure I was absolutely awesome at my work, as best as I could, And so I spent like 7 months as an intern. I got a glowing review. But I also spent those 7 months interviewing artists from every department, including what was then called the Digital Artist Group. And that group would eventually become ILM Singapore. And so every day I made it a point to try to talk to someone about their work. And many artists were passionate about their craft. They were so generous with their time. They would spend the time just talking to me and, sharing what they're doing. So I attended every talk I could by industry professionals and folks within the company. And naturally, being in the company meant that you were exposed to all of these lunch talks and all that you wouldn't be exposed to if you weren't in the company. And so again, if you have an opportunity for an internship, I highly encourage it. If you're a student, definitely get in an internship, get to be in the environment, get to see what the work is like, get to talk to the artists and figure out what your passion is like. Because I can tell you for a fact that you really won't understand what it's like until you are in the industry. So that's kind of how I got my own pipeline CG education. I learned about what each department did, how the work tied into each other, just sort of being there and talking to artists. Because there wasn't really much of a chance for me to learn about the CG industry in my school. I created my own opportunities by being proactive. And I think that's really what you need to do to break into the CG VFX industry. If you're not proactive, chances will not fall into your lap. It's not like other industries where maybe it's a bit easier. You graduate, your paper's degree or cert is going to be the thing that opens the door to, companies. All you need to do is write resumes and send them out. Anyone who's been in the CG industry knows that that's not the case. Doors don't just open to you like that. And so, one of the things I did after talking to many industry practitioners was, while many of them couldn't exactly tell me how to get into the industry, I felt, and that was rightly so, because the industry, there's so many ways to get in. There's so many disciplines. There isn't one correct way or prescribed way to do it. But one thing I got, which was a consistent message, was get one foot in the door. Just get one foot in the door. So I wanted to, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So one of my favorite books about this point, and how I decided to get really proactive about it, was really The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. And one of the first habits is be proactive, carry your own weather. And that has been the habit that I think has had the most significant amount of impact in me just being in the industry or getting into the industry. So I think the key is don't focus on what, proactive people focus on what they can control. And they never see themselves as victims of circumstances. And that's really key. Even as you go into the CG industry and all, never see yourself as a victim of circumstances that are happening around. Always, control. You always focus on the things that you have control over and not be a victim of circumstances. So I went back to school, but I kept in touch with my boss over the next year. And, it was about time to graduate. And I was thinking, hey, I kept thinking about the words, get one foot in the door. And I was like, okay, how do I get one foot in the door? Because if I can find just a gap, I'm going to jam my toe in. And I thought, okay, what are my strengths? What was I good at? What was I sufficiently good at that Lucasfilm would value my skills? And it certainly wasn't my drawing skills or my modeling skills, which were non-existent and still in very many ways non-existent. But for me, the most obvious choice was programming, because that's what I know how to do. And, it wasn't something that Lucasfilm needed for me to do at a very, very high level in order to get in. So how about you? What is it about you? Again, if your desire is to get into a big studio and you're just graduating and your portfolio isn't going to cut it, then, what are the skills, what are the strengths do you have that would be of interest to a studio like Lucasfilm? Just keep in mind that for me, it was programming, but I've seen other folks being hired as production assistants, social media coordinators, facilities assistants, IT support, etc. I even know a guy who is now an animator in the industry, and he started off as an IT support, just doing IT support at Lucasfilm. And so, there might be other ways that you can get into the company and sort of use those opportunities to then leverage your ability to pivot into sort of the role that you want to be. And again, like every studio is just like any other company. They need help in other areas outside of production. Your ultimate goal may be to be an artist like me, but if you want to get into a AAA studio or a production powerhouse like ILM, Pixar, you got to get creative and hustle. Alternatively, and not everyone wants to do that. Alternatively, you can just join a smaller studio where your skills where you are make you, a viable fish, so-called fish in a bit of a smaller pond. And the opportunity for you to hone your craft to the next level is going to be there, is going to be much more plentiful for you. And so you got to be very clear about and understand yourself as an artist. What route is it that you want to go if eventually that's what you want to be in the artist path? There are pros and cons either ways. And the key, I think, is not to follow the crowd in these highly competitive situations. Never follow the crowd. I decided that getting into a big studio and pivoting my way to be an artist was the way for me. I think it has many advantages still. And I actually wrote an article on my blog called How to Land a CG Job with No Demo Reel, which is basically what I did. I didn't have a demo reel for many, many years, even as an FX TD. Yeah. So anyway, I wrote an email to my ex-boss, and he was such an incredible mentor to me. He got me to work as a contract staff in his department, in software engineering department. And because he knew I wanted to work in VFX, he made like special arrangements for me to be a pipeline TD on like Transformers Dark of the Moon in San Francisco. So I spent like half a year in San Francisco ILM, just kind of learning everything I could about the industry and my role as a pipeline TD. I did like 2 months as a render wrangler, a resource assistant, making sure there's just enough disk space to do all of that stuff on Gore Verbinski's Rango and J.J. Abrams' Super 8, which were both, very, very interesting projects to be involved in. And so kind of by the end of my half a year of baptism of fire, I was offered the job of basically what they call it an assistant technical director, but it's really just a pipeline technical director on Transformers Dark of the Moon back in Singapore. So I took the job and I flew back to Singapore. So that was kind of how I made my way and sort of I guess I got my goal, which is to get my name on credits on big films. But really, and I did that by playing to my strengths. So I just wanted to encourage you that be creative, figure out what your strengths are, and there are definitely ways to achieve your goals if you're creative and you play to your strengths rightly. So for me, I knew when I started on Transformers Dark of the Moon, by that time I was pretty much clear of what kind of a department or role I wanted to be. And I really liked the challenge in effects because it's really a department where you kind of have to know a lot of things: simulation, animation, rendering, lighting, and a lot more. And it used to be that, you know, if no one could figure it out, then here, effects department, figure it out. And I love but the thing for me was I love the complexity of the types of natural and sometimes unnatural phenomena that we are trying to recreate in CG. For me, God makes everything look so easy and so beautiful. But as an effects artist, as a CG artist, you know it is super hard to copy that in CG.
Yeah.
The amount of complexity is infinitely, wow. So anyway, I knew pretty early on that that was what I wanted to do. It was my blends of my strengths and my technical skills and my artistic skills. I was really glad that they didn't require me to draw. So for any one of you asking, do I need to be able to draw to do CG? No, it helps, but no. And for those of you who don't draw, I highly recommend you pick up photography. That is really, really helpful to train your eye. So I was prepared, to work doubly hard because really I got a job as a pipeline TD, but I'm trying to get a different job as an effects TD. So you're basically starting from scratch and you have to prove that you can do the work. Even though you're already in the company, it's going to be much easier to make the pivot, but you still have to be prepared to work doubly hard. So
what would be the difference between a pipeline TD and VFX TD?
So as a pipeline TD, I would write scripts, plugins. I would maintain plugins and setups for, sometimes it's generally for the entire show. So between how maybe I would write tools and maintain tools and support tools for how a modeler might be able to publish his model downstream to a rigging artist to rig and, all of that kind of stuff. But as an effects artist, your job as an effects TD, your job is to work on shots. Your job is to create the natural phenomena or the unnatural phenomena that you see on the big screen. So it's much more of an artistic role, although as an effects TD, it does still require you to know math and physics and a bit more technical skills. And it's actually pretty good because having a background as a pipeline TD means that you can troubleshoot a lot of the issues on your own, and you have the skills and the abilities to expedite your workflow and your processes much faster than, say, someone coming from just a traditional artistic background with no technical skills. That he or she may not be able to figure out, oh, I do this all the time. Why don't I just write a script?
Yeah.
And I can go focus on being creative rather than trying to make sure that it is correct.
Yeah.
So I stayed back. I studied documentation, tutorials, and anytime that the effects department had a request, I would jump onto it. Eventually, I was supporting the effects department exclusively. So I I would be maintaining the setups, the effects setups, the tools. Anytime an effects tool broke, I'd be the one who go in and, troubleshoot it. And so I had to understand how they used it, and I had to understand how it works, which is definitely helpful, And I wrote tools for our own proprietary tools like Zeno and Plume, for some of you who may know some of the tools that ILM uses. And right about that time, this is where this slide says, be prepared for opportunities. So I was preparing myself for opportunities. And in production, there's always opportunities. That's what production is all about. It's about problem solving, and there will be problems. And when there are problems, they present for themselves opportunities. So right about that time, the studio was introducing a new tool to the effects department, and my DPS, the digital production supervisor, basically the pipeline supervisor, asked if I wanted to write the pipeline for it. And I said, yes. And always say yes, to things that people don't want to do when you're a junior. Because it turns out that the tool that they were introducing was Houdini.
Oh. So it was a good jumping on point.
Yeah, it was a good jumping on point. Everyone was like, "Nah, what is this new tool? I don't want to support it. I don't want to use it." I was like, "Whoa, what is this thing?" Okay, yeah, I'll do it. And so I started supporting the Houdini tool. I had to write stuff for it. I had to understand it very well. And yeah, this was right about version 10, version 11. This is the splash screen for version 11. So for those of you who are a bit old school enough, might be able to identify this one. So Houdini and my effects journey are so deeply tied together. And so I love to talk about Houdini, and I love to talk about the company side effects. And no, they don't sponsor me at all. So I just think they're an incredible company, and I love the work that they are doing with the software, and I love using the software. And it's about right at this time where my job as a pipeline TD and effects TD sort of blurs, and that's great. So I learned effects in Houdini on my own time. It helped the entire department. It helped also that the entire department was trying to learn this tool. So they were hiring folks with Houdini knowledge, and they were having all this lunch and learns, and I was attending them and, trying to figure out Houdini on my own. I would, show you, my earliest, most atrocious work if I could, but I didn't find them in time for this presentation. So yeah, I mean, I got this opportunity to support it, and really right about that time, again, I built all the pipeline for it, so I knew how it was used. There were not a lot of people who knew how to use it, and so I started to get opportunities. And one of the opportunities was sort of on Pacific Rim. ILM didn't yet have a very suitable crowd solver. For something as simple as they wanted to create like schools of tuna fish for, when all the Jaegers, the robots are underwater. If you've seen Pacific Rim, when all the robots are underwater, it's hard to sell the scale of these robots being huge.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, was proposed to do was to, hey, why don't we put like schools of fish? Because we know, how big fish are. So, it's easy to sell the scale of the robots right next to fishes. So I was like, oh, okay. It turned out I was playing around with Houdini, and I had basically written a crowd solver in Python, of all things, in Python, for, sort of a crowd schooling behavior. And it was, for those of you who are keen, it's called, it was a Boyd's crowd solver. And this was, before Houdini even had a crowd solver at all. So I showed that to the effects supervisor, and he was like, oh, okay, we could do that. And so, they were like, okay, why don't you write the solver, but I need you to rewrite this in VEX because Python's too slow. I was like, okay, VEX, what's VEX? And so that was kind of how I got started. I learned VEX and I, introduced that. And that was kind of my first task. And that built on. They wanted to add additional things to it. They wanted it to be advected by fluid advection and all the kinds of stuff. And I was like, what's fluid advection? Okay, so I learned Pyro and I learned, so all of that kind of built on and, they gave me effect shots to work on. I was working on rain, I was working on mist, I was working on all kinds of water type stuff besides fishes. So yeah, so I often get asked by folks who are sort of getting into CG is what is the best software to learn? And I think to some extent, that might be some question, that might be the question that some people ask too when they are trying to go, should I learn Houdini? Is Houdini the best software to learn? And you will hear from many Houdini practitioners that Houdini is the best software to learn. It's the best software to learn for them. But I get it that you want to know that you invested your time in the right software. But the answer is really more nuanced. It really depends on what you want to do with it. And if you know what you want to do with it, it is easier to pick the right software. So
going back to understanding the why.
Yes, going back to understanding the why. And sometimes it's difficult as a beginner. Like as a beginner, you don't know what is effects, what is rigging, what is animation, what is, and if you don't know what these are, I would say that Houdini is probably not the best software for you to begin with. I would say pick Blender, pick 3D Studio Max, pick Maya. Those are great places to start, is what I would recommend someone who doesn't know what any of these roles are, to begin with. But if you sort of have a sense of what cloth simulation is, you may not have done it before, but theoretically, you know what it is, you know what effects is, you know what rigid body dynamics are, destruction, you know what fluid, fire, if you're interested in this type of stuff or procedurally generating assets, then Houdini is one of the best, if not the best software to learn in this respect. So what can Houdini do? And Houdini can do really a lot of things. And over the years, like when we started Houdini 11, they had introduced Pyro on Houdini version 10, and they were improving it on version 11. And I think they started introducing flip simulation, the flip solver in Houdini 11 or 12. Yeah. So Houdini has been adding on to its capabilities over the years. But the first thing that Houdini can do is definitely generate procedural assets. So if you are very interested in how you could create multiple variations of a staircase or a wall or a building or a city or a village, those are things that Houdini will do really well in. And, game industry artists will definitely benefit from that because you have to generate so many assets for a game. And then beyond that, obviously Houdini is really good for effects and all. And I'll show you some of the effects that I've done with Houdini over the years in a moment. Particles, fire, Houdini fire is pretty cool. Houdini water, the Houdini water solver is one of the best in the industry. And really there really isn't many water software out there that can compete with it. Bifrost is an interesting one to start looking into as well. And then obviously, Scanline's proprietary water solver, but you can't get access to it, so it doesn't matter.
What I found interesting about Houdini is how all those different systems you just mentioned, they build on top of each other. So like if you have a Pyro with, some smoke rising, and a cloth, went on top of that, it will rise with that, now without having to do a whole different type of sim. It can be together and talking to each other.
Yes, that's probably the huge advantage of Houdini, is that when you need your rigid body, for example, if you need ice cubes in a glass to affect the water that it's displacing and vice versa, those are things that you can't do easily in any other software, but you can do in Houdini because Houdini has them all kind of integrated together. And definitely, there are tutorials out there that will show you how you can create a splash of water that then turns into mist. and those are things that only Houdini can do. And so Houdini is really good at that, destruction, rigid body, and quite recently over the years, Houdini has been getting really good at crowds too. So a lot of big studios are beginning to adopt Houdini crowds. Over the last couple of versions, Vellum, which is the Houdini cloth solver, has been fantastic. They used to have a cloth solver, but it was so accurate and slow. But now it's really good. And as far as I know, a lot of big studios are moving towards using Vellum. Houdini hair has been incredible. I know like big studios like DNEG and all are transitioning over to Houdini fur, like almost exclusively. And again, there's a lot of reasons to transition to Houdini or to be excited about Houdini, because it can do so many of these things so well, but it doesn't cost you extra money to purchase a plugin for it. It's all comes with the software, and it's all regularly maintained. There isn't many parts of Houdini that are sort of marooned, abandoned plugins or aspects of it. And then obviously these days, the height field procedural terrain generation is also incredible. And I'm sure I'm like missing out on a ton of other features that Houdini has. I would say Houdini is great at almost everything except destructive modeling. So if you are a modeler, a sculptor, stick to ZBrush and stick to Maya or stick to Blender. Right. So I thought I'll just kind of see if I can jump into real quick. What time do I have?
It's 1:50. We got plenty of time though.
Okay. I'll just show you some of the stuff I've done in Houdini. So I might need to figure out how I could do this. Hit share. Are you guys able to see my DJV now?
Now we are.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just kind of go through a little bit of my reel and see what are the different things that I've done. So I've done, Houdini is really good. I've done stylized rain. I'm not sure if you can actually see the stylized rain, but all of these are like, for the brief, they didn't want realistic rain. They wanted like really stylized rain with long droplets. So these are actually not particles, but curves. And so I controlled the motion blur and all. So Houdini is really crazy in a sense that you can go, okay, if you wanted rain droplets that had some sort of crazy motion blur that was longer than the real motion blur, you can create curves instead to do that. Or if you wanted sparks that didn't just curve one way, but also sort of kind of jiggled and zigzagged along the way, you could do all of that crazy stuff with Houdini for sure. And so like rain and mist on, what was that project?
Now this was at Brazen, right? And Brazen's a Dallas team.
That's right. This is with Brazen Animation.
We had them come down and do a talk for us a year ago. So we love those guys.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, they are a very, very they've been producing really good work, and I'm biased because I was from Brazen, but hey, yeah. And again, let me just make it bigger. A lot of procedural sort of rain going on here. I'm trying to see if, yeah.
It's playing enough.
Yeah. So lots of rain and mist going on here. So anyway, particles, great with Houdini. The other thing that Houdini is good at is also, let me try to see if I can jump to that. I'll just show what we have here. This is a procedural ground interaction. So the dust, the dirt, all of that is generated procedurally in front of this foreground crowd. So Houdini is able to do stuff like figure out the intersection between the feet and the ground, and then just create emitters from it and generate dirt, dust, and all that crazy stuff. So,
and then, am I correct that like as these characters are moving, the dirt that they're carrying is going with them on their feet, and they're planting?
Yep. Yes. So as their feet plants down, it actually takes the velocity of their feet and then inverses it so that it goes in the right direction, in the right amount of magnitude and all that. And as they are running across it, it's colliding and dragging along, and it's dragging the smoke simulation along as well. So
again, all these systems talking to each other.
Yes, all the systems talking to each other. And there you go. This is my little fish solver. Let me see if I can create like a beginning and an end. Let's see. This is a quick one. So you can see the fishes. I don't know if you can see the fishes, but
yeah.
So these are the tiny fishes. And one of the things you realize as an FX TD is eventually you spend months doing something, and when it all goes into the shot, it's a bit hard to see. And that's okay, because sometimes as an FX TD you think, that's what I've spent a lot of time doing. But the whole idea is your effects is supposed to sell the story, is to help tell the story and not necessarily steal away from the story. So
hey Nelson,
yes.
I did a shot at Real Effects for the Simpsons motion ride that was 8 frames.
Yes, that is pretty much our story. Again, this is more Houdini stuff. This wave we actually did with Maya, but then all of the white water mist kind of coming off it, and all of the water effects, all of that, as well as the, let me see if I can just play it here, as well as the splashes are all Houdini. Another thing that Houdini actually,
how are you going back and forth then between Maya and Houdini?
So we would export Alembic caches to go back and forth between Maya and Houdini. But at the same time, we would write our own proprietary pipeline to export attributes across, so that within Maya, when we rendered in Maya, we would still have the different attributes for the white water and the foam and all that kind of stuff. Houdini is really good also at magic effects. So this is a soul suck magic effect from Warcraft, because Houdini is really good at rendering like millions and millions and millions of particles. Yep. So if you used to get bogged, if your software that you're using used to get bogged down with 30,000 particles, Houdini is like a breath of fresh air. I did the electrical arcs in this shot here with Houdini as well, which is really cool because you can procedurally decide like where the arc points start and where they end and how they splinter off and all that. And you just sim and you try to get really cool effects out of it. So let me see if I can just play this for you all. Yep. Let me see if I'm missing out on anything. Yes. So you've seen a lot of this one was a cool one. This oh yeah, Houdini. This another Warcraft shot that I did with Houdini, and then this is blood. You can do blood. We have, so this entire ocean monster was created in Houdini. And the power of Houdini is that it's such an open box. You can really go in and customize it. So you can really achieve anything that you want to. And sometimes you do need to do that because to fulfill the creative brief, it's just not something that you can do with off-the-shelf tools. So like in this case, I had to go in and sort of build off the existing flip solver and turn off a couple of things that I didn't need or that was sort of preventing me from achieving the look that I wanted. Okay.
What I love about that is the water's so stylized that like you couldn't put that through just a normal. You would need all the artistic direction behind it to get all those effects, and that's what really shows off here.
Yeah, this was definitely one where everything was very, very stylized. Okay, so this one you could really see maybe the interaction between the ice and the water. It was probably not necessary to have that interaction going on. But yeah, I mean, this was where a rigid body, I did the rigid body simulation for the ice and the lemon. Mm-hmm. And that also affected the water. So this was for McDonald's cherry limeade. So small scale water is also, Houdini is also good for small scale water. Again, like if you need to do stuff that's very stylized. So this shot, there's a very, very stylized shape to the explosion. They wanted like a really jaggedy look. And so that's something that you can definitely do with Houdini. And sure. Just one more here. This one, hopefully this will play because this is a 4K video.
The last couple of ones have been playing pretty good.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So let's play. This is a, yeah, this one might not play as well, but.
We're okay. Now we see something.
Let's see.
No, it's just, yeah, it's just, oh, here we go.
Yep. So this is a 4K video, so it may not play as smoothly. So I'm just going to jump to maybe keyframes.
Yeah, that's a saber.
Yeah, so some of you might recognize this dragon. I'm not going to say where it's from. But yeah, I had to do some dragon fire for it. And Houdini does really, really awesome fire, in my opinion. I love it. And I love the fact that I can just do everything within one package and I don't have to jump out of it and, try to bounce around or figure out what's the best way to, what's the best plugin to do millions of particles or that kind of stuff. It's cheaper, I think, for the independent artists in that respect, not having to pay for all the individual plugins. So Houdini can do lots of stuff. Let me jump back into the slides. The next question is Houdini hard? Everyone asks that question. Yes, it is hard, but only because it requires you to know the principles and concepts behind CG. So, and that's really very helpful if you are an effects artist. One of the things is that I've sort of learned very early on, or been told very early on, is button and slider mashing will not give you results. Someone told me that. I was like, okay, I don't really know what you mean, but along the way, I realized that because in effects, there's so many settings that you really have to know what each setting is doing in order to art direct it very well. Someone once said that effects is like trying to direct a toy boat in a bathtub with 2 toy fans. And so you really have to know each one of those settings very well in order to get it to do what you want it to do. And I think that's the way with Houdini as well. Because it's so open, you can sort of easily mess up if you don't know what you're doing. And then the more you try to fix it by button mashing, and it gets worse and worse. So I think initially that's what makes Houdini hard for individuals, is realizing that you kind of have to have a thorough understanding of CG. You have to know what each parameter is doing. You have to you can't just think, okay, by clicking on the shelf tools, I'm going to get a water simulation. But you actually have to take some time to figure out what does particle separation mean? Like, besides, it just gives me a higher resolution simulation, but you have to kind of understand why did they call it particle separation? How is it the radius? Is it the diameter difference? That kind of stuff. But I think Side Effects has been working really hard in terms of introducing the shelf tools to make them as easy as possible to get access to by beginners. And I use the shelf tools quite frequently too, just to get a sense of, because Houdini is changing so often, like, how are they doing this? Like, what is the difference in this new version? So I would lay down what comes from the shelf tool and actually see, oh, okay, this is how they're using it now. And then, how would I do it my way? And sometimes I use the shelf tool as a good starting off base, or I'll create my own custom setups. So anyway, I think for me, it's not really a fair question to ask for me, is Houdini hard? Because I knew very little about anything else back then. So I had no idea what hard meant. I started off in sort of Max a little bit of Maya, but I never really got into it. I never really used it in production. But Houdini was sort of the, well, I did use Xeno and Plume as well. But for me, Houdini was the tool that I really got into production with. And so today, I think Blender and Maya is hard. So I think it's all kind of relative. So how to approach learning Houdini, or for that matter, any sort of VFX or CG tool. I think the key is if you are just getting into it, you see the benefits of Houdini, you want to add it as a tool in your toolkit, which I highly recommend. It's a really good tool. Is to really just set short iterative goals. Don't aim to learn Houdini. Aim to learn something that you want to create with Houdini. So if it is, I want to learn to create, welding sparks. So set yourself a 2-week goal and see how far you can go with welding sparks. And I really, if you're trying to get into Houdini for effects stuff, and you're new to effects, I always recommend start off with effects. Learn how to create rain. Learn how to create sparks. And I'd much rather see a portfolio with sparks from a beginner because I know it's going to be used. So I know this guy can create sparks because I'm probably going to have to create sparks pretty soon for the next project. There's not a single project that doesn't require sparks. So, Sparks is a great place to start. And the cool thing is, you can get as complex as you want with Sparks. And I've seen some pretty complex Spark setups that are very, very powerful. But it's one of those things that you learn, you can learn like version 1 of Sparks, and then you can go ahead and incorporate version 2 and make it even better. But the aim, I think, is to just create something and not solve a problem.
Is that very easy in Houdini? Like you say a Spark tool, but maybe version 2 of your Spark tool is like Spark tool that then does multiple collisions from the Sparks. Is that really easy to manipulate, with Houdini?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely very, very easy to
build on top of, I guess, is my question. Be iterative,
yes,
as the project changes.
Yeah, it's very easy to build on top of. You may start off with just in-shot effects and you just build it. And then once you get a sense of like, okay, I like this stuff about what I built for this Spark thing. But there's stuff that I didn't quite like about it. There's stuff that I think I want to formalize a little bit. And then you can just go ahead and create a Houdini. They call it a Houdini digital asset, okay, which you package it up as it becomes a .hda file that you can just hand over. You can just bring with you to your next project. You can continue to build upon it, version up on it.
Or those are basically just like a little tool that you can either, like you said, build on top of or hand to other artists?
Yes. Right? And that's the power of Houdini. You can create your own plugins. If you think about it, I mean, you can create your own plugins and then you can hand it to the rest of your team. Or if you're an independent artist and you've created this really, really awesome tool or plugin that will benefit so many other people, you can even sell it. You can sell it on the Houdini Obalt store, or you can sell it on Gumroad. There's so many possibilities with Houdini, and yeah, these Houdini digital assets are really key to the power of using Houdini.
I know for like my team, we've already done it with a few things, is we have 3D Max Houdini engine. So we can take those HDA tools that you're talking about, bring them in there. Now we got our Houdini, this plugin that we created. And now we're looking into like Unreal. And that's one of the great things about Houdini. They've seen this in the industry and have made it available. You don't have to be a Houdini artist to use the Houdini tools necessarily.
Yeah, and Daniel, that's a great point, because like what you said, Houdini's digital assets can be used in Unreal Engine. They can be used in Maya. They can be used in Unity. And you don't have to know Houdini to use it. And a lot of times in production, I would be creating pyro setups, like fire setups, destruction setups for junior effects artists that sort of packages all of the complexity away and gives them a simplified interface that they can use, or they can use in a non-Houdini effects version, like what do we call it? The Houdini, I think now it's just called vanilla Houdini, right? It's just, it's the cheaper version where you can just package certain things up, but you can't really run dynamics.
Like Apprentice?
Apprentice is the educational free learning version.
I thought it was Houdini Engine or Houdini Core or something.
Yeah, I think Houdini Core. They've called it many things in the past. There was Houdini Escape. It used to be called Houdini Escape. But now I think it's just Houdini Effects, I believe, is the version that has no limitations. And Houdini Houdini Core is the version that has some limitations. So you can create all this incredible setups in Houdini Effects and then package them up as a digital asset and then hand them down to another artist that may not need to use all of that power on the shot. So very, very powerful tool.
I'm going to also say, guys, if you came in late, you can ask questions either in the chat or in the YouTube chat. Just FYI, we'll be getting to those in just a bit.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nelson.
So I'm almost running to the end of what I have
Oh,
to say.
and to answer your earlier question, yeah, we seem to have about 70% professionals, 30% students in
Oh,
the
okay.
chat. Just
Great. Great. Yeah, so great. So again, Houdini is so vast, more so now than in version 10 when pyro and procedural assets was the thing, right? Now there's like everything in there. You want to do crowds, we can do crowds. You want to do cloth, we can do cloth. You want to do hair, it is a fantastic hair solution. And so to be honest, I don't even know if I teach some of this stuff, but to be honest, I couldn't even teach it all if I wanted to, because I'm still learning. Every time they release a new version, I'm like, hey, side effects, fantastic, but I need to catch up. So Houdini can do all of that stuff. Like I said, I can generate terrain, simulate cloth, room hair, create crowds, generate procedural assets. It's even an excellent lighting package. Like it integrates with V-Ray, with Redshift. I know a lot of people are using Houdini and Redshift. Mantra isn't too shabby. It's a bit slow, but they're replacing it with the Karma renderer. It is the first DCC application that I know of that incorporates USD as for some of you who are not familiar, USD is the Universal Scene Description open source format released by Pixar that basically is a really powerful way for you to describe your scene, and really powerful way, like it's replacing Maya's referencing workflow in most studios right now, because it's so powerful. But it's not a first-class citizen that's incorporated into Maya at the moment. Houdini has it incorporated as a first-class citizen right now. So today, if you download Houdini, you can use USD and the power of USD from the get-go. And Houdini has excellent lighting package, in my opinion. I think Method Studio uses Houdini as a lighting package. Very accessible, especially if you don't want to learn another package like Katana or have to set up an entire Katana pipeline to do lighting. If you already use Houdini or know Houdini, but you want to have a lighting package that is able to be very powerful and support like hundreds and like sometimes even thousands of assets in a scene and still be able to light them really quickly. Houdini is a really, really powerful tool for that, in my opinion. And it supports every major renderer I know out there, including RenderMan. But I'm really excited about Karma, so hoping that more cool stuff will come out from it. And there's also Arnold integration. So yeah, just focus on one aspect of Houdini that is of interest to you and try to achieve mastery. So where can I start learning? I think the best place and this is really for if you're completely new, you've never touched this before, the best place I think to start learning is probably Antagma's 5-minute series. So for those of you who are not familiar, Antagma, they are a duo that releases a lot of free Houdini tutorial resources on their YouTube channel and on their website. So I'll also include the link in the resources page. And they have started a 5-minute series to introduce new artists to Houdini. And I think there's like 20 tutorials in that series. So I think it's great. It's a great start for you to get into. And then from there, kind of branch out and decide what specifically you want to achieve mastery on in Houdini. But definitely don't be overwhelmed and don't try to do everything at once. The other page that's great is the Side Effects Getting Started website. Side Effects website itself, they have a section called Getting Started. And that's also an excellent place to begin. I was going to announce as well that on my YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, beginning on the 7th, I think is the August 7th. I'm going to start a YouTube live, just sort of 2-part series on sort of beginning Houdini. And it will be a very, very simple YouTube live session where over two live sessions, we will just go ahead and create a simple Spark setup, and sort of get you started in terms of understanding the tool, the mindset behind Houdini, how it works, and a brief introduction to how particles works in Houdini, and some rendering, just really simple rendering.
That's really excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
I'll make sure to post that onto our a bunch of short guys Facebook, so people can get it there, or they can just subscribe to your YouTube channel.
Yep, definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the. Apparently, YouTube requires you to hit the bell in order to be notified.
You got to do all those thingies and hit the buttons. And
yeah, it's like
Mash the button.
Mash the button, and as my son would say, splatter the bell. But if you don't want to do all of that, the simplest way to do is to just go to my website, nelsonlim.com/learn. So it's nelsonlim.com/learn, and just subscribe to my insiders newsletter, because I do update my my insiders whenever I have any sort of training, tutorial, new videos that come out. And I also frequently, if you like some of the stuff I talked about besides just hard skills, I often talk a lot about soft skills, about the mindset behind creating more, the mindset behind how you can earn more, the mindset behind how you can live more as a CG artist, because I think those topics don't get talked about as much. There's a lot of tutorials out there and a lot of really, really good people coming out with really, really good tutorials out there. But I don't think there's quite a lot of materials out there, at least when I was trying to learn on my own, like things like what we talked about. What is your purpose as a CG artist? Yeah. Why do you do the art that you do? And I think it's very, very important. And how can you leverage some of these psychology strategies to really level up your game in your career, as well as in your finances, so and in your life in general? How do you lead a more fulfilled life? It's so easy to get burnt out as a CG artist, and I've been there, and that's another story for another day. But if you like all of that stuff, those are stuff that I try to talk about in my insiders newsletter. So just go to nelsonlim.com/learn and just subscribe to my newsletter, and I'll let you know when that YouTube live series is coming out.
Thank you, Nelson. And yeah, I'll just piggyback. I mean, that's the reason we started this group, or why you guys started this group and I became part of the group, was just really interacting with everyone, and then also learning from one another about our daily lives, and that, I'm not the only person just sitting at my computer for what seems like 20 hours a day, Yeah. And then feeling the sun up, feeling 103-degree sun on my skin actually feels good, because I'm tired of hearing the air conditioner all day.
Yeah, man, you got to build a network. You gotta get to know folks. You gotta learn from each other. You gotta band together. Yeah.
I think we have some questions. We definitely have some questions in the chat. Marshall or Ethan, can you give me those?
You're talking about from YouTube or from?
Yeah, from the YouTube chat.
Whatever feels good to you.
Yeah, why don't you read them, Ethan?
Sure. At least starting from the top that I see. Lily Flowers asking, you did cover a little bit, but how much concepts of math and technical skills such as coding came in handy as a VFX artist?
Well, I think when you start off, don't worry about the math. Don't worry about the math at all. Because you can do a lot of things without knowing the math. But as you go along and as you solve problems, you're going to want to learn some basic linear algebra, vector math. So you gotta try to get an understanding of what's a vector, what's the difference between a magnitude and a vector. So what's the difference between speed and velocity is something that you'll want to know. And it's really not that complicated. And then as you, progress on, you want to know a little bit more, what's a dot product, what's a cross product. And those are useful math for you to figure out is if something is perpendicular to another, to each other or not, or are they parallel to each other? Some of that is useful for you to shape things, or for you to figure out is my very common thing that's used is my white water particle inside the water surface or outside of the water surface? And if it's inside or outside, how do I bring it such that it just sticks on the water surface? But again, like don't let that scare you away, because I mean, fine, I did learn it in university, but I have to tell you that I honestly didn't know why I needed it when I learned it, so I gave it back. And I had to relearn it again when I became an FX TD. So, I've seen lots of really good senior FX TDs who aren't necessarily the kind who would describe themselves as strong in math, but they just learned what they needed to learn in order to get it done. But like I said, once again, when you start off, don't worry about it. You hardly use it until you need to use it, and then you can learn it. All of that resources is available online, and lots of people teach it. Khan Academy is a great place to learn about linear algebra.
What was that? Academy?
Khan's Academy.
Khan Academy. A lot of students who are trying to learn math go and listen to Khan Academy. So they've built a lot of good tutorials. I want to say, Nelson, I think one of the most valuable things, by the way, this is Jay. Hi, how you doing?
Hi, Jay.
I think one of the best advice you gave was really, instead of trying to learn a software from nuts to bolts, is going in with a project in mind, right? Because that's the best way where you can kind of scope what you learn about the software, and then you learn the math or learn the other things that you need to do to make that effect really, really cool. And along the way, you're not almost like learning math, you're learning how to make things cool by learning what you need to do to make it cool, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's not trying to dig in and say, oh my gosh, now I need to go back to school and become a physics and math guy. You just kind of say, well, how do I make this thing do that? And then you kind of do your research and kind of dig in, right? I mean, would you agree with that's kind of the methodology?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I call it just-in-time learning. because as artists, we are driven by what's creative, by what's, what we want to create that's beautiful, that's in front of us. I actually don't care about math if it doesn't help me create something beautiful. And so, and I get overwhelmed really easily when I'm presented with just more than 3 options. So I'd say for me, I do that because it keeps me motivated. Like what's begin with the end in mind. And for me, beginning with the end in mind. Oh, and that's also another habit in the 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in mind. As an FX artist or as a CG artist, I know what I want to create with the end in mind. And everything that I'm doing, everything that I'm learning is to serve that end goal. It motivates me. It helps me to understand why I'm learning this. And like I said, I learned dot products, cross products back in college, but I gave it back because I didn't know why was I learning that for, but now I know it because I know why I'm learning it. So the why is really important, not the how or the what.
There are a lot more YouTube questions. You want to?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, I just wanted to give a quick mention about Khan Academy, since I know you mentioned 30% are new to CG. If you're one of those people who were like, I have no idea what cloth simulation is, what does a creature TD do, or any of that, Khan's Academy has a really good series that they run with Pixar that teaches you all of that. And I've recommended it to tons of new pipeline TDs who joined the industry, that just go check it out. And then from there, figure out what you like, pick something you like and go pursue it. And, don't feel stuck. Don't feel stuck that, because I started off as an FX TD, I have to be an FX TD for the rest of my life. Or because I started off as a modeler, I have to be that. No, you can transition. I was a pipeline TD, I'm an FX TD, and now I don't know what am I these days, but
You're definitely inspiring.
oh, thank you.
So another question from the chat. Gizmoson asked, he switched from Houdini Pyro to Embergen for smoke and fire pipeline for games. Have you ever experimented with Embergen?
I have seen a lot of cool stuff coming out from Embergen. I have not tried it yet. I would love to want to get to try it out, actually. I think Embergen reminds me of when I was in ILM and we were using this proprietary fluid solver called Plume. It is a GPU fluid solver that would also render. So like literally, I wasn't trying to sim then render. It was simming and rendering at the same time. And it was blazing fast. And Embergen reminds me of that, probably maybe even faster. I mean, that was like 10 years ago already. So obviously the tech is a lot better now. I'm very excited to see what Embergen has to offer and to try it out. And also just to see how real-time fluid simulations are going, because I have an interest in Unreal Engine and I've been playing around with it. And really, fluid simulations within Unreal Engine are pretty much non-existent at the moment, real-time fluid simulations. So a lot of it is doing like using old school cheats that we've been doing in film like maybe 15 years ago. But still it achieves great looks. I mean, you can see there's really some great looking stuff coming out of Unreal Engine, even in the effects department. But like I said, it's a matter of time before real-time fluid solvers come into Unreal Engine as a first-class citizen. And so I'm excited about Embergen, and definitely something I want to try out in the near future.
Cool. Next one, I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize, but it's Turtug. Yeah. But he was asking, he's starting to write Houdini pipeline. What is your advice for starting with this? I think having HDA publishing system is good, but I think it may quickly turn very complex because everyone is just publishing in HDA as is convenient for them. Is there any other approach to managing Houdini pipeline?
So writing a Houdini pipeline involves, I think, a couple of things. And I've written Houdini pipelines before. So obviously the most common thing is, regardless of Houdini or any other package, you need to write the tools that kind of surround the Houdini pipeline, which is, your save dialogues and all. You never rely on artists being able to save stuff in the right convention, not because they can't remember, but because production is just so like, why do I need to spend 10 seconds to figure out how should I name the file? Just hit save, right? So there's definitely low-hanging fruits that you can do with just writing the pipeline to begin with, is to write all this smart, the smart saving tools, the smart opening tools, so artists don't have to dig through folders and all of that. And then just kind of moving on in terms of very specific it depends on what the artists are using. Like one of the things that often artists would ask for is some way to be able to, for example, write a tool that makes it even easier to wedge simulations. And there is a way to wedge simulations in Houdini already, but can it be easier? Yeah, it could be easier. And then obviously integrating into whatever render solution you currently have is one. But if you already use an off-the-shelf render solution like Deadline, then maybe it's not so much of an issue. And then, yeah, I mean, very quickly you can't run away from the problem to solve, which is how do you wrangle all of your HDAs? Because eventually your artists will get to the level where they're generating tons and tons of HDAs. And so, yeah, you have to wrangle that. And there are many ways you could, and there are many smart ways you could. I've heard of people who even use Git as a way to revision control their HDAs, because I think if you think about it, at the end of the day, HDAs is a bunch of text files, really. And so I've seen people use Houdini to do that. Personally, I don't have my own HDA revision control kind of tool. I actually just cobble all of my stuff and put them in a package, and then I just put them in a gallery. So Houdini has this thing called a gallery, and you can make custom galleries and just drag and drop your own nodes that you have packaged up together and drop them into a gallery. And then you can copy that gallery file and bring it along with you anywhere. So that's actually a pretty low hanging fruit of how you could, have tools sort of or common setups be shared between different computers and all. So it really depends. But ultimately in a production environment, yes, you do want to write a digital asset version control, basically asset management system.
I don't know if this will help your circumstance exactly, but for us, so we use Perforce since we moved to doing a lot of things in Unreal. And in our Perforce folder, we have an HDA folder that houses some of our Houdini visual assets. And, somebody writes it, it gets saved there. We all get latest, and then it gets updated to our 3D Max, Houdini engine ones, and things like that. So that might help. Your solution sounds even more better. So
no, I mean, that makes perfect sense. If you have Perforce or if you have SVN, that's a great option because it will lock your HDA as it's being checked out. You just have to, if your artists are technical enough to use a command line and check out HDAs and change them and then check them back in, that's great. If they're not as technical, then you have to write tools around. You have to write tools around using them, or maybe check out a off-the-shelf UI version of it. So there are off-the-shelf UI versions. I mean, Perforce has a UI. I think SVN also has a UI. Git has UI versions, I think, of it as well. So, check those out for sure.
Cool. Next one up is from Thomas. And he was asking, what do you think of commercial alternatives to Houdini, like RealFlow or Bifrost? I know you covered a little bit of talking about that earlier, but and he was also asking, are there any other software to look at seriously when learning the skills required to enter studios like ILM as FX technical directors? Or should it focus on Houdini only?
So if your goal is to be an effects technical director, at this point in time, I would recommend you focus on Houdini. The reason is because every studio is different. Every studio uses different tools for sure. Some use proprietary tools, but Houdini is pretty much becoming the industry standard in terms of effects. There are definitely there are some studios that are not using Houdini for effects, and those are things that you should know. So unless you have a very specific studio in mind that you are wanting to apply for, then definitely research what they're using. And if they're not using Houdini, then learn whatever it is that they are using, if it's available to be learned. You know, like you can't really learn what Scanline is using for effects, but you could use, but yeah, I mean, all tools at the end of the day, the principles are the most important. I like Houdini only because the Houdini Apprentice version is free to download and start using, and everything comes together in one package. And so you don't have to go and find, you know, like if you want, and I'll use Max as an example, but Daniel could probably, because I like I said, you know, I used Max when it was 2.0. I don't even know what Max is like now these days. So I risk being wrong by using Max as an example, but I know like Max, if you wanted to work with particles in Max, you probably want to either try out Thinking Particles or TyFlow, right? And TyFlow is free. So if you're learning, TyFlow is probably good. And then if you want to, you know, do like millions and millions of particles type setup, you have to probably download Krakatoa. If you wanted to do fire and all, you probably have to go for Phoenix FD or something like that. If you wanted to do water, you know, you have to try something else. So, you know, you can go, you know, through all of this route, or you can just learn Houdini, or like what Daniel says, the power of Houdini is that each one of these solvers can affect each other if need be. And I like the fact that they're just all in one package. And very well maintained, very well updated. Houdini has a nightly build. So if you meet a bug in the software, you know, probably go to the Houdini website and check out their change logs and nightly builds. 9 out of 10 times, I found that the bug is already solved, and I just need to download the latest version that night.
Yeah, I do find that there's sometimes these industry shifters. Like when Houdini came out, you know, there were, you know, we saw it as like, okay, this is complicated, but there's something there. Same things kind of happening with Embergen and TyFlow. I mean, TyFlow is something we, you know, as 3D Max particle users, we've been asking for years, of something that's multi-core, you know, enhanced, you know, that just work. You know, we liked a lot of us particle flow guys. We liked, you know, things over there, but it was just kind of slow and didn't do millions of particles very well. So there's these just industry shifts, and I would say, like, you know, whatever your passion is for, you know, as far as software, as far as like getting things done on a daily basis, is just look for those industry shifters. You know, if you see the next Houdini coming out, well then, and you see that's going to be super powerful, yes, you know, might want to start looking into that. You know, and I think when you jumped onto it down in 2011, I think that was a great time. That's when like things were blowing up. I was actually in LA at that time, and there was just, you know, tons of beginner Houdini classes that Side Effects was putting out there, because they people were seeing that they didn't know how to use it, but they were also like being very gallant about, you know, putting the information out there. And I could just see like, oh, within a year, people were paying, you know, $100 an hour to $200 an hour for just Houdini artists. You know, just sometimes there, and then that doesn't stay. But at the same time, you're like, okay, well, maybe there's something to that program. You know, that everyone comes up to me. You know, it's like, oh, this program came out this week. You know, this free Photoshop program. Like, well, does it shift the industry? You know, does it answer a problem that we're not answering right now? And in those cases, that's when I like try to take note and try to look at that.
Yeah. So I'd just like to mention, for me, the things that are exciting for me right now that are potential industry shifters is, I mean, Houdini is I already learned Houdini, but there's still so much to know. Unreal Engine. If you looked at all the virtual production stuff they've been doing on The Mandalorian, check out the Disney Plus documentary on that. It's pretty cool. Love it. And I mean, I would include Embergen in Unreal Engines. You know, they're kind of together. and Blender. And only because Blender is so disruptive, because it is so accessible. It's so free right now, and and they've made it a lot more accessible now with changes since 2.8. That it's really spurred Autodesk and Nuke and everyone to rethink the way they price their software. And so we've gotten, and that's good, because now you have Maya just announced Maya Indie, and so I recommend Maya Indie for sure. If you're going to enter a production environment where, for example, if you're entering ILM, I want to be a production artist in ILM, then ILM does not use Blender, so learn Maya. But if you I want to work on is it Barnstorm Effects? They did the Man on the High Castle. Yeah, or or some of these studios that produce Netflix animation, they are working in Blender. If you want to work for them, learn Blender for sure. But I'd say you would not go wrong if you learn either. I still, just because now they've made everything cheaper, I'd still recommend you learn Maya, and then on the side, learn Blender.
There's a couple other questions from YouTube if you'd like. So Lily Flower says, on the topic of faith, what is your inspiration, motivation to keep going when times are tough or rough? How did you overcome feelings of fear or self-doubt even when the road was unclear?
Ooh. That's a good one. Not to make this religious at all, but I'm a Christian, so that's my faith. So for me, I believe that God made me for a purpose, and I'm here for a purpose. And so a lot of times when a couple of things, a lot of times when I'm down and in a rut, sort of career wise and all, that's one of the things that really sees me through, because I know, for me, I have a great faith in terms of, I know that God loves me, and that's that's okay. I don't place the value of my self-worth in my work, or at least I try not to, because a lot of times when I do, that's when I get into a rut. When I go why aren't people liking my work? Or very easy now that I'm on YouTube, why don't I get enough subscribers? Maybe I'm not that good, but no, I think just focus on the fact that I focus on the fact that God loves me, and that his promises for me is that he would see me through any situation, and that I just need to place my the most important thing is who am I trying to please? I'm not trying to please other people. I'm just trying to please my creator who made me. So I think when I see things in that perspective, it makes suddenly it frames everything into a proper perspective now. And I know how I can proceed. And I know where I should put my attention on, even at work, when I receive a harsh critique about my work, I try not to be defensive naturally. And I just go, did I do my best? Did I do my best, not to please my boss, but did I do my best to please God? And if I think I did my best to please God, then let me look at this critique and let me not take it personally first. And then let me look at this critique and say, what can I learn about it? And does this person have my best interest in heart? And if this person does have my best interest at heart, what can I learn about it? I don't have to agree with it, but there's usually some amount of truth and there's at least 10% of something I can take away from.
Yeah, it seems it all goes back to the why. And if you have that solid why, it doesn't matter that somebody's critiquing your work. You all want to make a good film, right? So yeah. There's a couple more questions that are really good, but I'll try to combine them. One was asking about which were the best programming languages to learn. But Extinct Vessel also asks, what advice would you have for those who can't quite figure out what specific field or skill field they're going into when they're interested in different stuff like animation, concept art, storyboarding?
Okay. First question is, what is the best programming language to learn? If you are in the CG industry, Python. Hands down, Python.
Hey, you have some tutorials about that.
Yes, I am teaching
If you know more, go here.
Thanks for the plug. Yeah, I'm actually teaching a Python series called Python for the Anxious Artist, because that's me. So if that resonates with you, you want to learn Python, you want to learn it the right way, you want to feel confident about being able to write tools and all, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Definitely subscribe to my Insiders newsletter, and we'll be going through that. What was the other question, Marshall?
It's about how do you find what if you've got a big interest, a wide interest in many different things, how do you find what to focus on?
Oh, I actually wrote a blog post article on my website at nelsonlim.com. I think /blog. But in either case, I'm sure you'll find it once you get to nelsonlim.com. And it's called The Secret of CG Specialization. And first things first, if you don't know any of those roles, like I mentioned in the previous question, go check out Khan's Academy. Just get yourself familiar with what those different possibilities are. And maybe just going through that already, certain things will resonate with you more so than others. And then I think you mentioned something about you're interested in concept art, you're interested in all of that stuff. The secret to CG specialization is, if I were to summarize the entire article, is just choose one thing and start somewhere. Just try something and give it enough time. Try it with enough time. Don't try it for a week and then, oh, I'm going to try something else. Give it enough time, and don't feel like you're boxed in once you've tried something. Like long enough, you feel, oh, I'm so boxed in, I have to be doing this for the rest of my life. No, I believe human beings, we are created to be so creative. We have much more skills than one. Yeah. So just the key to that is you have to try. And as a new artist, you have to produce a lot of volume of work. You have to keep practicing and keep doing and keep trying, and just pick one, really. And don't be afraid of being boxed in. That's all.
We do have one other question. What factors result in a portfolio application being viewed as good or stand out from others? This is Lily Flower. And what have you been successful in Reels and what have you found to be successful in Reels and portfolios? we can end on that one.
Okay. Yeah, I'm probably not the so
I don't have a portfolio, right?
I mean, like I
do now.
I do now in the industry. I have a demo reel, but for the longest time, I don't have a demo reel. I think there's lots of resources out there for sure that once you Google, that will tell you what people are looking out for in a portfolio. But a couple of things I would say. First of all, there are different tiers of being of portfolios. So you would have your portfolio tier when you're first graduating, and then you have portfolios when you have done a reasonable amount of work. You have a portfolio when you are a supervisor. You have different tiers of portfolios. So I'm just going to address probably the question is probably more targeted at the fresh graduate portfolio trying to get into the industry, or the aspiring artist trying to get into the industry. The first thing I would say is keep it really short. If you only have one thing that you think is at an industry level of work, just put that one thing. That's fine. And as a CG lead and a CG supervisor in the past, when I look at portfolios, if I see stuff that's not like at the best caliber level, sometimes I wonder whether the artist has any idea, like, does this art is it that he or she is just trying to cram as much as possible for me to see the range of skills, or does this artist really just have no idea what is good and what is not good? And so if you just have one thing that's good, just put that one thing. That's good enough. And don't care if it's 5 seconds. If you have a 5-second reel, a lot of people don't even have a reel. So that's what I would say. Second is, if you follow tutorials, do not put tutorials in your portfolio, in your demo reel, because it's good to do tutorials and post them on your Instagram, post them on your Facebook, whatever. Show us what you're doing. But don't put them in your demo reel, because if you put them in your demo reel, it only shows me that you know how to follow a tutorial. But as I mentioned before, production is all about problem solving. No client will ask you to do a tutorial, like to do the exact results of a tutorial. And so you need to take a tutorial and condense down the skills, the concepts that you've learned in that tutorial, and then get creative and think of, what can I do that applies the skills and concepts to this, but have my own creative input into it and try to do that. Now, it doesn't have to be original. Just keep in mind, I'm not asking you to create original content. No, it doesn't have to be original. If you look at a National Geographic photo and you go like, oh, I like that stuff, like I just want to recreate a scene that looks like that. That's okay, gain inspiration from somewhere else, but don't post a tutorial, because or even just a slight variation of a tutorial, because after a while, I think every soup has seen every tutorial out there.
So Marshall, really quick, I from listening to your story, Nelson, it seems like you've developed really good relationships with people, and networking is a big skill set that you have. So what advice would you give to especially shy animators or visual effects artists to help them learn how to be better, networkers and learn how to get their foot in the door? Because a lot of them are really shy and they don't know how to talk to people. What advice would you give them to learn how to build better relationships?
I would say the key is never see it as networking. If you use the term networking, then it has certain connotations in your mind. And then, I think mentally it just gives you a mental block. Think of it as this, you are an artist, they are an artist, and, artists just want to talk art talk. And so you're passionate about what you want to do. They're passionate about what they're doing. And just like how we are all here talking about art and all, just make it feel like it's just any natural conversation. So the first thing I would, again, I refer back to my blog post about how to land a CG job with no demo reel. I actually put some tips in there on how to network, how to talk to people. One is, if you're particularly shy, make a plan, like put an appointment in your calendar where it says, get out of your seat and go talk to someone. Okay. And it will be scary at the beginning, but it's okay. And let me give you a script on how to do that. I mean, there's actually a step-by-step script in that blog post. So remember to check it out. But the script goes basically like this. Just pick someone who doesn't look like he or she is particularly busy. Okay. And just introduce yourself. Say, hey, I am blah, blah, blah. I'm new. What are you working on? I mean, I'm trying to learn CG and VFX, and also I'm really interested in what you're working on right now. Do you think you could just spend 5 minutes and talk to me about what you're working on. And they would probably spend more than 5 minutes talking to you about what they're working on if they're not on a deadline. And if, and if they are on a production deadline and they go, I'm sorry, but I really can't talk to you right now, that's fine. Production is busy. Just say, oh yeah, thank you. But can I talk to you some other time? Sure. Swing back, in a week or two and do that. But do that every day. Like if you're in a production environment and you're trying to learn, do that every day. Do that every other day. Now, if you are not in a studio and you are trying to get to know people, the internet is a great place. Firstly, this is what I personally recommend, is that whatever it is, if like you want to be a modeler, you want to be a FX TD, and you've seen films, commercials, or whatever that you really like the work of, go look at the credits. Who are the effects artists? Who are the CG leads? Who are the effects leads on those? And there's LinkedIn, there's Instagram, there is Facebook. LinkedIn is fine. LinkedIn is perfectly fine. Just go to LinkedIn and find them and drop them a message and say, hey, I just caught, I don't know, X-Men Apocalypse last night, and I really like this particular effect. And I just wanted to let you guys know that I really, really liked it. That's it. Don't ask for a job. Just tell, artist to artist, you're not looking for a job. Just tell them what you appreciate. And, from there you can, you can go work on your stuff. And at some point in time, when you feel, when you've come up with a portfolio or whatever, go ahead, send it to these people. Hey, by the way, I have a portfolio. If you're interested to check out what I've done, want to give me any feedback or whatever, I'll be more than happy to take some feedback from you. And maybe 10% of those people will get back to you. That's fine. Rejection is fine. That's perfectly. Don't take it personally. Things are busy in production, but that 1%, that 10% that's going to reply to you, those are the people that you want to hang on to, because they are your mentors. They are people who will mentor you, and it's very, very important in your career to find mentors, people who are willing to take a chance on you. And I've been blessed to have had mentors who were willing to take a chance on me. And because of that, I was able to be where I am. Yeah.
I will also add to this, because I've had people do it to me, is if they don't respond, give them a little time, month or so, and you can always ask again, because people get busy. And I do it all the time where I'm like, oh, I'm busy. I'll talk to, and then a month goes by, I look through my emails like, well, I never got back to that person. I feel like a jackass now. So.
Oh yeah. And I'm so guilty of that. I'm like so shy when I started off. Like I saw like Scott Farrar, VFX Soup, John Knoll in the office, and I was like, I remember, and I'm going to tell you this story because I remember I had this coffee table book called I think it was like The Magic of ILM or something like that, and John Knoll was in the office at that point in time, and I was like, dang, I wish he could sign my book. And I waited. He was there for 2 weeks, and I waited till the end, the last day, before I plucked up enough courage to ask him to sign it. And it was like, I think it was like in the morning, maybe 11 o'clock, and I went to his office, and his assistant said that, well, he's out for the day already. He'll most probably be back at the end of the day. Turns out that his schedule was so busy, he never returned. So I never got the book signed. So, well, I'm not trying to discourage anyone here, but I'm just saying that he was really nice, because he left me a message, and he told his assistant to tell me that, I'm so sorry I couldn't meet you, but the next time I'm back in the office, please come by and I'll sign the book. So, I mean, like, these people are really nice. So, yeah.
Just too cool.
Yeah.
That'll be you one day, Nelson.
Yeah, he still hasn't signed my book yet because I left after that.
But that is the lesson. that is your lesson. You said is be prepared for opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So when you have that opportunity, you just want to kind of take it, even if sometimes you might be afraid, go for it. And then a lot of times the worst thing in your mind doesn't happen. It works out better than you thought.
I love Jay that you said that, really, because that reminds me of this mentally. This is how I overcome it. What is the worst thing that can happen? They say no. Okay. Am I better or none the better after that? Nah, it doesn't really make a difference. So just give it a try. Yeah, I found that that's always been helpful whenever I'm in a rut or in a either in a bad scenario. So what is the worst thing that could happen? And I realize it's not really that bad.
Did we have any more questions on the chat or anything?
I don't think so. I think we've covered all the main areas. The chat has died down quite a bit.
Well, I'm just going to reiterate, guys, if you want to hear more about these talks, just subscribe, hit the like button, go to our Facebook. We post it on there regularly, different topics, meeting events, different socials, different meetups. We're pretty active on there. So if you got any other questions, you can always post us there.
And our next meeting should be what, August 29th?
Yes.
And I want to just say, Nelson, thank you for your time today and sharing all your experiences and your insights and your wisdom, because you have really, I think, helped a lot of people today who were on this meeting. So thank you so much for taking the time out and really helping people and giving them hope and giving them good advice on how they can try to pursue their dreams. So thank you for that so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Jay. Thanks for those kind words. It's been really such a privilege to be able to come here. This is what gets me excited every morning to really come out and help people. And so, I've been blessed that with my career, with what I've been able to do. And so it's a blessing to be able to help others. And I'm thank you so much, to hear that it's been able to help, someone in some way. And thank you so much, Daniel, Jay, and Marshall, and everyone at a bunch of short guys for, so inviting me out here and, just listening to me ramble for a couple of hours. And I love all the questions from all you guys, the audience, the viewers, all very, very good questions. And I wish I could stay on and answer all of these questions, but, so.
It's time to go back to work.
Right. Go check out Nelson's website, and I'll do another plug. Absolutely go there. I checked out some of his videos. He's amazing. So please go check out his website, and that's where you can learn more insights from him through the web. All right. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to go grab something to eat, but appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
Make sure you get tan.
Have a good one. Hey, guys.
Bye.
Our long awkward silence.